Hey, folks, welcome to this convo on 5G. I don't know much about 5G. You're going to see how embarrassingly ignorant I've been, but I've got a couple folks on here who know a ton about it. So I got both Dennis and Jeremy on here. We're going to walk us through it. We're going to get a little bit of background from them, and then I'll start asking questions, and we'll fire through as much as we can. Dennis, you want to start with you and just give us an idea of kind of where you're coming from, experience, work history, that stuff that brings you to 5G and Helium?
Sounds good, man. So I'm glad. Thank you for having me and Jeremy. For the last 6 years, I've run an IoT company, mainly with LoRa being our main form of communications. Just like anybody in LoRa, they saw that, the network is not, the coverage just isn't as great as, say, like cellular. So on my path to grow LoRa, I kind of stumbled upon private LTEs and that's where I also found Helium. It was a network that I was trying to build on because of my project and my company, and now both worlds, CBRS and LoRa, kind of got intertwined. So it's just a match made in heaven.
Badass. Jeremy, what's your gig? I see you on Discord, but yeah.
Yeah, so I've been working in wireless for 20 years now. I was there sort of at the beginning when Wi-Fi went into the enterprise. It's really where I got my start. I was working, for a Cisco Gold partner way back when in the UK. And I started my own specialist Wi-Fi supplies company selling antennas and cables in the UK. It literally was the dream. We were shipping stuff out of my dad's garden shed on his farm in Wales. And then one day I was on a plane to Australia to go and do a rock and roll tour, using wireless networks to hook up all their cameras. And I spent 15 years doing that, doing big events and things like that, being their wireless guy, doing everything from Lollapalooza to NFL draft, all kinds of interesting and fun things, trying to get Wi-Fi to do things it was never intended to do. And looking enviously at the cellular guys and all the kit that they had and not having access to it. So when Helium 5G came around, I was already into CBRS because I wanted to use it at events. When Helium 5G came around, I was obviously very interested. I'm interested in decentralized. I was already doing LoRa. And then when the 5G announcement came in, I was like, great.
Dig it. And then Travis, everyone knows you're one of Helium's head geeks on the tech side. Just psyched to have you here listening and making sure that we don't go too far off the rails.
Yeah, I'm a fly on the wall on this conversation. Just happy to be a part of it. Thanks
Cool.
a lot, Nick.
Okay, so we'll start off with the big question, and my stunning ignorance may make your jaws drop, but 5G does not mean 5 gigahertz, right?
Right.
I'll let Jeremy take this one.
Okay.
All right. So can one of you guys, let's see, maybe Jeremy, do you want to walk me through what 5G actually means?
So 5G is a standard rather than a frequency. So what a lot of people get mixed up is it's like, 5G, it's fast, it's 5 gigahertz. No, there's Wi-Fi 5 gigahertz, and that standard is 802.11 AC typically. And we've got new standards coming when they talk about Wi-Fi 6 and those other areas. But 5G itself is really a set of standards that cover all kinds of frequencies, everything from down in the sort of 900 megahertz all the way up to 80 gigahertz in the top end. But how the devices talk to each other, that is governed by the 5G spec.
Got it. So it's not a frequency, it's a series of instructions about how to use a giant kind of set of frequencies down from where we are with LoRa all the way up to something super tiny.
Yeah. And, 4G right now, the LTE we have today that everyone's familiar with on their phones, that doesn't come on one frequency. It doesn't come on 4 gigahertz. It comes on a whole range of frequencies, depending on where you might be in the US or in the world. So, same thing, basically.
Cool. Take it. That was my first thing. Was like, 5G's got to be 5 gigahertz, and I started reading like, no, it's 5th generation. You dope. Okay, so there's some kind of
it's
good.
I was going to say it's a bit of a marketing, like Jeremy was saying. It's all of one thing. For the consumer side, just it's easier to tell them. It's 4G, it's 5G. You don't need to tell them it's millimeter wave, sub-6, CBRS. That confuses people. So for just everybody, like consumer wise, just for them to know 5G, and that's it. That's the easiest, way to market something.
Cool. Yeah, totally dig it. I mean, within 5G, there's a bunch of different bands I've been reading about that have different frequencies and ranges. So anywhere from, 0.7 miles at the kind of smallest at the high band, and then low band might go out much longer. You guys, I'm sure, have correct some of those distances. But
if anyone has got a relatively modern phone and has used Verizon recently and seen the sort of UW on their phone, so if you can figure out where that 60 gigahertz coverage pattern is, basically you can move around the corner of a building and it'll drop right off, because that very high frequency radio will not go around that corner, does not reflect, and does not go through things. So
that's a super good time. It's a little bit of kind of radio 101, but the lower frequency bands, those will kind of bend around and reflect off stuff. They're kind of tougher, but they don't carry as much information. And then the higher frequency, if I'm getting it right, is way shorter. Like it'll get stopped by anything, but it's carrying a giant load of information as it goes.
Correct.
Pretty much.
So the kind of promise of 5G when it was announced in, I think, late April of 2021 by Helium was that you'll be able to connect your 5G phone through a 5G Helium hotspot, starting with the Freedom-Fi. So immediately everyone buys the wrong Freedom-Fi. The website wasn't really set up. I was in that group. And then we all went back and kind of bought the right Freedom-Fi, and mine's getting shipped to me right now. It should be here in the next couple of days. But it is not by a long shot the same thing as the LoRa hotspots we've been deploying. Where would you guys say it differs the most, or is there a couple different areas where people should be aware before they say like, oh yeah, I'm buying this thing, I'm just going to plug it in the window and it's going to work?
So for like a regular LoRa hotspot, there was a miscommunication besides just the buying the wrong miner. I've noticed that there was miscommunication that a lot of people were thinking that the Freedom-Fi unit does not mine LoRa. It does also mine LoRa POC. So, for anybody that even just wants to start off with buying the gateway and just mounting it like a normal Helium hotspot, you can do that. And then you always have the ability to upgrade. It is a future-proof, if you want to call it, gateway or hotspot, where down the line, if you do feel like 5G was going to be the way to go, you can just always attach another radio to it. And you can always move the hotspot from your location that you are right now to, a business or something at a later point.
Yep. So we got some terminology there that is super easy for you guys to sort out, but I get caught up on it sometimes. So we tend to call hotspots gateways, or you guys call them gateways. In Helium land, we call them hotspots. And in this case, a hotspot can be differentiated between LoRa, LoRa for long range, which is what pretty much everyone has right now in December of 2021. And then what this Freedom-Fi will be, which it sounds like it's maybe agnostic is not the right word, but it can process a bunch of different, bands on the frequency. Is that kind of right? Or do I need correcting there?
Unknown, to be honest. I mean, right now we know that the radios that Freedom-Fi will make available are the CBRS, which is the 3.45 to 3.7 gigahertz in the US. So we know that that's available. We don't know about other bands. And I think, internationally, it's different in every country. CBRS is US only. That's one of the things that has puzzled a lot of people, is that Helium 5G currently, with that particular platform, the Freedom-Fi platform, is US only. In Europe, there is no CBRS system, so you can't use those radios. Could they use a different radio on band 41 rather than band 48? Yeah, they could. So, that's just really a regulatory thing. And that is purely, you can have different kinds of small cells that support different kinds of frequencies. And as long as they likely, and this is a total guess, but they're running a 4G core, because right now those radios are LTE. They're not actually 5G radios. So,
okay, hang on a second. We got some terminology stuff here. So there's the way I'm seeing this whole setup, once you have like a fully operational Death Star, once you got your 5G setup, is you got basically three pieces. You've got the miner itself, which is the Freedom-Fi miner. And then you've got the radio that connects the miner to the basically to the antenna, which is the third thing. So it's like a 3-layer stack of things you need.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's your Freedom Phi.
This is the Freedom Phi unit that I have right here. So the gateway and the hotspot, the LoRa hotspot, are technically this device right here.
Yep.
So the LoRa side is here, just like a regular, what is it, RPSMA. But this is the brain that actually will talk to the radio. And this is actually also, like I said, the hotspot. So gateway, hotspot can kind of be intertwined between each other. The additional part that you would need outside of like just a regular LoRa setup would be the CBRS radio.
Okay. And then there's 2 other things I heard there that I want to make sure we hit, CBRS and small cell.
Yeah.
So CBRS is not citizens band radio. It's not like the radio that truckers use. It's, what is it? Citizen broadband wireless something or other?
It's Citizens Broadband Radio System, I think. I mean, I say CBRS like 500 times a day, and I can't remember. But it is meant to be available to anyone. So in the past, typically, when the FCC said, okay, we're going to make some spectrum available for cellular communications, these very small group of people are allowed to bid for it. That's it. If you're an enterprise, if you're a business, you can't bid for it. You have to be a telecommunications company. What they did differently with the CBRS system is they said, it's open to everybody. Anyone can use it as long as they have compliant equipment. And that's what we have today. Anyone can buy, and the Freedom Phi kit you first bought, Nick, that the wrong one. That's just your standard private LTE CBRS system, right?
And that would be for like a business who's not doing helium, but they have some reason to wirelessly transfer information from one place to another via these frequencies.
So the use case that when I first got into CBRS, the use case I was looking at was point of sale at festivals and access control. Those 2 things are super important because festivals make money by selling beer and t-shirts. They can't sell beer and t-shirts if there's no one in there. So getting people in and out and helping them pay for things quickly, really important. So that's why I was looking at it, because I was running all of that stuff on Wi-Fi and competing with everybody else in the world who's running Wi-Fi. But with CBRS, It's dedicated spectrum. When that radio turns on, phones home, talks to the servers and says, here I am. This is what I can do. Tell me what frequency I can have. Tell me what transmit power I can have. The system talks back to the radio and says, okay, there you go. That's what you do. And then the radio comes live. Now, there's almost no human interaction in that, which is the beauty of the system, is that, you can deploy these radios, and that's dedicated spectrum to you in that location. No one's ever really had that before. To access dedicated spectrum, you had to buy these really expensive billion-dollar licenses that cover the whole country. Now, you don't even have to buy any license. You just can run this CBRS.
Let me see. There's a couple things there you're saying that seem super important, but I want to make sure I understand it. So this idea of dedicated spectrum for a radio, it sounds like on Wi-Fi, that's not the case. On Wi-Fi, like there is no dedicated spectrum. You kind of broadcast out. Everyone's broadcasting out on the same, really probably narrow band. And so you can be stepping on each other or screwing things up. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Basically, when you fire up the Wi-Fi on your phone, you look for a network. There's hundreds of lists of networks that you see. They're all using, at 2.4, the same 3 channels, and then 5 gigahertz, the same 16 channels. So you're competing with everybody else.
And the CBRS, this change is relatively recent in the U.S. I mean, right?
January 2020, right? So when they sold or they made it available, something like that.
Yeah, so it actually is only about a year old. I think the auction payments, like the company's only paid about a year ago, so it's very new.
Very new.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm thinking about this. I'll get castigated by someone for thinking of it this way, but I've spent some time in places outside the U.S. And I'm thinking of this as the difference between if you've been on a super highway in a third world, it's a shit show, right? There's everybody everywhere. There's animals, there's pigs. Like it's super slow. They get lots and lots of stuff down there, but it takes forever versus a super highway in the U.S., not at rush hour, right? Where everyone's in their lane. They're all driving 70 miles an hour. We're getting lots of people super fast, but it's because there are rules. Like you can't go outside your lane. You can't have pigs or cattle or chickens on the freeway or bikers. It's kind of what it's like is how I'm thinking of it. Okay.
Basically.
Cool.
I mean, with Wi-Fi, what you have is, and the way the system works is, it's very loud. the access point is listening to all these devices asking, basically screaming at it, please, please give me some bandwidth. And the way it allocates it is not especially refined. And the biggest problem is the handheld device. It's always the weak point because the antenna in that is small and inefficient. But in the difference then when you move to CBRS where you get dedicated spectrum is the difference between trying to talk to someone across a crowded room and being able to talk to them across that same room but with no one else in it. And that's it. Who's going to be heard easiest when there's no one else there, right? That's basically how, I think about interference a lot of the time.
Okay. That's super helpful. Now, you'd said small cells. What's a small cell? That's an antenna?
Yeah,
or is that something else?
Yeah, so it's kind of the radio and small cell can kind of be, it's the same thing. It's just different ways that, that you can call them, but they're considered small, cellular devices in a sense.
So this thing, which weighs a ton, is an outdoor small cell.
Yeah.
And it is really heavy. The radio that you see, that T-Mobile or Verizon or any of these guys might deploy makes that thing look like a toy. Very, very different. So small cell is like an old cellular term. It's the way those big cellular guys used to think about, we'll just put a small cell indoor. They tend to think outdoor, macro, and then they go indoor, micro, and small cell.
My what I was thinking terminology was is kind of explaining like putting a router inside of your house versus putting a large radio like that outside. So yeah, that was what I wanted to kind of get at.
Okay, so we got our three components. We have the monitor, the radio, the antenna. Estimate on those from Freedom File is that it's going to cost $1,000 to $5,000 to put that together. That was an estimate from a while ago. What are you guys thinking in general?
Yeah, so the gateway itself is $1,000, $999. The indoor radio is $1,500, and that comes with the kit. There are some radios that are going to be available anywhere between $2,500 for the lesser powered outdoor unit, and then it does start going up. I believe their higher 1 watt power radio is around $5,000. So with the gateway, with the basic 50 indoor radio, you're looking about maybe $3,000 because you will also need you'll need a PoE adapter for the radio. So there's some minor stuff that you'll need. Of course, if you're going to do LoRa, you'll need a radio and some LMR 400 cable or stuff like that.
Okay. And then when you're saying radio, does that include the antenna as well, or that's something different?
So some of these radios that are coming out, like the indoor radio and the outdoor radio, do have internally built-in antennas. There are going to be some options that do have external antennas, so those are going to be a little bit more advanced, and those require a little bit more knowledge of how to place the antennas and which antennas to purchase. But those would give you a little bit more, flexibility, especially if you're installing, let's say 4 radios, and then you can have 4 different antennas on a mast and different, you can pinpoint them in different directions.
Got it. So it's really kind of what people currently want to be able to do with LoRa that you really don't need to do. With LoRa, you can put up an Omni and it'll just cover a giant bubble of area. But with this, because it's so much more focused, you actually probably do need to have a couple different antennas pointing a couple different locations to very specific things you're trying to capture. Is that
right?
So there's a disparity there between a LoRa install, or what I would optimize to be a LoRa install, and to be a 5G install here, as to both my antenna, I guess, location and installation here.
I mean, I think the outdoor stuff. We talked about this a bunch in the 5G CBRS channel. At this early stage, it's probably not really smart or sensible to think about spending lots of money on big outdoor deployments to cover huge areas, because you are not going to compete with the big telcos. They have better equipment. They, one of those macros is like, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars versus, $5,000 or $10,000 if you build out a nice sectorized 360-degree system. But you're not going to beat the big carriers with their platforms. So, Elmer's advice through the thing, and the locations that they're looking at rolling out in are probably easiest if you go through where's an ideal location rather than outdoor.
What's the ideal location look like?
So for me, my first, what I'm looking for is an area that's indoors. Like Jeremy was saying, if you're going to go try to compete with in an outdoor location, you're going to get competition with the big cellular guys. Our main antenna, the most powerful one that we can get our hands on, that can the gateway can support. When I say gateway again, I mean the Freedom 5 radio. Gateway is 1 watt. Where you're going with like a carrier grade, they're 50 watts, and their downlink is 100 gigabits a second. So we're recommending indoors because there's one, less competition. Two, it's going to be a lot cheaper of an install. Like Jeremy was saying, when you do have like a 365-degree radio deployment, you're looking at multiple antennas, multiple radios. So that's the cost right now is just I can't say it's not worth it, but at the moment it's just not worth it. So for an indoor location, what we're looking for is high traffic, where there's a lot of people congregating for a long time. So for example, like our first location that we are targeting is a food court. And when I say food court, I'm not talking about a mall food court. There in Southern California and other places that I've been to, there's buildings that when you walk in, there's just a bunch of restaurants. In one location, I have about 3,000 people coming in and out in a day. A lot of people are sitting there on their phones during, lunch for work, or, during the weekend. And I noticed that when you walk in, when you're outside, yeah, there's perfectly good 5G. I'm about 300 megabits per second down, but when I walk in, I'm about maybe 40, just because radio just does not penetrate walls that well. So my radios that are inside can do really well. So it's not just you need, you have a lot of people, but you can do a basic speed test just by being on your phone and then just going on and doing a just speed test on net, or even Google speed test, and you can see that, hey, from outside to inside, there's a large difference between my speeds. And so you can actually, like, hey, this is, you'll instantly know, like, okay, this is a good location. I have a lot of people here. The speed is a lot less when I go inside, and this is also, that location is open from 6 a.m. until 11 p.m. So
right.
My traffic is going to be, 14, 15 hours.
Sure. Let me ask you this then, because the standard location for a LoRa device is pretty easy. You just put it up on your roof and get it high and you're done. This sounds like it's, to be straight, it's much less accessible to the normal person, right? Is that there's less of those locations. It's not like everyone has their own food court. Those locations may already have some professional working it. So you're going in there as an average Joe and trying to figure out something that is not really your expertise. And the way you guys are talking about speeds and how you're measuring stuff, there's a testing side. Like I forget who I asked, might've been Travis. I was like, hey, is there a device I can just plant in the middle of the street and it'll just scoop up all the wireless signals for, 72 hours and tell me like if it's worth it putting an antenna there? And I think Travis was like, dude, the NSA has those. You can't really use them.
Yeah, stingers.
Stingers, that's right. Yeah, stingrays. Yeah.
One question I do have, just if you don't mind, Nick, because we've seen with helium the saturation in urban areas with gateways. Can you guys comment on like small town implementations? For 5G, and because a lot of people I know are pulling their their helium gateways out of concentrated urban areas like San Francisco, New York City, etc., and moving into more small town deployments. Can you comment on the 5G aspect of that?
Actually, yeah. I know Jeremy actually had a good point on that. One of the responses earlier in Discord. But what I kind of wanted to tell people, yes, on the LoRa side, because a lot of people do get this, again, they think that, just because it does 5G doesn't mean that it's going to affect reward scale and stuff like that. Yes, if you were to assert this location where there is already, other miners, it will affect reward scale. But the 5G side of it, the CBRS side of it, that's not going to be affecting you. You can, on the backside, there is 3 ports for radios. You can technically connect just a regular networking switch and be able to attach more radios to it. But, let's say you have a strip mall that just has a bunch of restaurants, and you can connect a radio within each one and it won't affect you. It'll just kind of give you more coverage and allow more connections to the radios.
Okay, so we think of those radios as really like packet forwarders in Helium. Is that there's the miner is the computer doing all the work, the packet forwarder is the actual radio.
Correct.
Let's see, one radio, one antenna, or is it one radio can go to multiple antennas? I can't imagine. Well,
so one radio, so the indoor radios, the ones that we kind of recommend people are using, those are also the least expensive ones. They do have a built-in antenna. So it's just, it looks just like a regular router, just a white box, and has one connection in, and you just mount it on the top of a ceiling, and it's actually a relatively simple installation. There is a GPS antenna that you will need to run that allows for it to connect to the it needs a GPS sync for the back end for the radio to be put onto the network.
For what Jeremy was talking about, like, hey, I'm here, I'm broadcasting at this thing. Okay.
Correct.
That's it.
Got it. And then what's the range on these things? So the ones that I guess the normal person will get are, what is it, 2.5 to 3.5 gigahertz? Those are the radios we're going to be using. Is that right?
3.5 to 7.
Yeah.
Oh, 3.5 to 7. Okay. So
3.5 to 3.7 to be
3.5 to 3.7.
Yeah,
a little narrower than I thought.
Yeah, but 200 megahertz is more spectrum than most carriers own, just to give people an idea. But range, I've had some experience with the same radio that Freedom-Fi used, different firmware, obviously Solana firmware, but I've had some experience with that. About 1,000 feet in clear air. It's gone further, but depending on what you set the cutoff point as to when you say, okay, at this signal strength, I won't connect anyone. That's something that we as Solana set at one level. Freedom-Fi could set it at something else, so they could go way further. They could go 1,500 feet with an indoor radio. But
when you're saying way further, it's not the difference between like 1 mile and 10 miles. Like everything that this radio is going to touch is going to happen within
outdoor
1,000 feet.
Outdoor to a phone, half a mile.
So, for example, if I could just throw a crazy question out there, let's say I have a ranch out in the middle of nowhere, but I do have a backhaul at the ranch house, and I want to have, but I don't have cell coverage except when I huddle in one little corner of the ranch house, and I can actually get a cell signal. Is this a technology that I could set up there and then actually have like line of sight coverage around my property and then backhaul off of, whatever setup I have there?
I mean, there's been a lot, obviously the last 2 years has been interesting for everybody. But one of the things that has been a big issue for a lot of folks out there, particularly in the States, is rural coverage. Because kids are all of a sudden working from home in school. And now they're doing remote class. So actually, CBRS came along at a really good time. There's a lot of networks been put out by K-12 institutions where they've done exactly what you're talking about, Travis, where they've connected people in rural areas using CBRS private LTE technology. It's been exceptionally successful. So yeah, absolutely. And in agricultural space, there's in agriculture right now, obviously there's a lot of smart agriculture happening. On the one side, you've got all your sensors. There's a good way to think about wireless in general is try and think about it like a stack. And different systems are good for different services. So LoRa is great for very long range, low power devices with tiny amounts of data, because 900 megahertz goes a really long way. And we're not sending, we're not sending video or anything like that. It's small. It's just little bits of text. But if you've got an autonomous, seed drill rolling around your farm, that thing needs better connectivity. Yeah. And Verizon are not going to roll up and go, we'll upgrade the tower for you, no problem. So you can build your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
very cool.
Yeah, that's actually one of the projects that I actually have been helping with. I know that there is a bunch of farms that are using just that, exactly, smart agriculture, and they're going to be deploying a lot of these radios outside, and they're even going to be running them off of just hotspots, 4 or 5G hotspots, and they're actually going to just, it's kind of like a signal booster, if you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But it's not, it's not sending, huge amounts of data, but they're sending more data than a LoRa, packet could actually, transfer.
By a long shot.
More than 50 kilobits per second.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's a low bar. It's a low bar.
Correct.
Let's go into how much, because everyone's interested, like how much, I don't know, H&T, how much do you think someone will earn from a well-deployed Freedom-Fi or other 5G gateway? Jeremy, what's the company you work for?
I work for Solona.
Solona. Are you guys going to make one, or are you not sure?
I'm not product. I'm technology marketing, so I couldn't say. Our focus is slightly different to Freedom-Fi. So our focus is more the enterprises. So the folks who are going to buy an Aruba or a Cisco or a Mist Wi-Fi system for their warehouse or whatever it might be. That's our world of
that's your people,
customers. So it's slightly different. But sorry, what was the original question?
Yeah, they're like, what's someone going to make? Is that I was reading a stat that said the average person goes through is like 11 gigs per month on their phone. Yeah, just like the average person, right? Dennis, I see you smiling.
It's hard to, I know, yeah, right. When I go, like I told you earlier, like I go through 50 gigs every like 2 weeks. So so it's hard to tell, man, and that's the going to be the answer that we have to give, and it's because we would love to be able to say like, oh, you're going to earn X amount of money on this, but it really it's gonna depend on, just like even with LoRa, it's gonna depend on the location. The installation is what's gonna matter the most. If you have a location where you have 3,000 people, like the location that I have, you can kind of see, you can kind of guess like, okay, maybe if they're sitting here, there's maybe 200 gigabytes being moved, every hour, and it's a guess. Luckily for me, I did have access to the Wi-Fi system, and I know what they're moving through the Wi-Fi. So that kind of gives me an idea of like, oh, hey, this is how much traffic that people are hoping that they don't use on their cellular. But it's going to be very hard, especially if we don't get a legacy carrier like T-Mobile, Verizon, and AT&T.
Yep.
But honestly, if one of those comes on, it's there's no limit how much you can actually make. So that's kind of the benefit of, if the more carriers come on, the more data can be moved through your network.
When you say there's no limit to how much you can make, I don't understand that. Is that just, it's a function of how much data gets passed through your radio, right?
Correct.
Okay. Let's hit the stuff we know then. So right now, for data to go through a LoRa gateway, it's something like, I'm going to get this pretty wrong, but close enough. $400 a gig to process data on LoRa. Is it the same on 5G or Wi-Fi?
No. So on Wi-Fi, we don't have the information just yet. Just rumored information. So we'll kind of gloss over that. But with 5G, we are looking about 50 cents per gigabyte. So it is a lot less, but
there's
yeah. So, sorry, like comparative to like LoRa, where it is $400 for a gigabyte, but at the same time, people think like, oh, hey, 50 cents a gigabyte is really low, especially, LoRa is 400, but the side is on wholesale, and Jeremy can actually, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but carriers like Dish Network and Mint Mobile and all these other smaller providers that do not have their own towers, they're paying up to like $2 per gigabyte wholesale. So 50 cents to be able to go, move a gigabyte of data on our network is very, promising to them, because that's actually really inexpensive. So I understand. I know the next question is going to be like, but why can't we, charge $1 a gigabyte or something like that? Like, back in the day, like Jeremy was saying, you were spending millions, if not billions of dollars to get a license. For us, you're looking about $2,500 on the low end side to get started. There's not much more that you're putting into it. So, I get the whole thing that it can be more expensive, and I hope they do come out with dynamic pricing to where, it kind of fluctuates a little bit, especially in a situation where, like Jeremy was saying, in an event where there's no traffic and you need to move a little bit more, let's say, I know that, for example, Coachella, where there's hundreds of thousands of people, you're not getting signal. So in a case like that, where you're hoping to get signal, maybe I'm hoping to make maybe $1, $1.50, because the signal just isn't there, and I'm hoping that I can move it. But that's why we're starting with 50 cents. It's just kind of it's a good place to start, in my opinion.
Who sets that price? Is that something that the carriers will pay, or I don't understand how that gets set?
So that got set in HIP 27, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so it got HIP, but there has been talks again with that dynamic pricing. So, but I'm sure there's going to have to be another HIP that's going to be implemented before that does become.
I don't see how anything could possibly go wrong.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Yeah, I mean, what I will say is that in my experience of going to shows and putting in, both the production network and the customer-facing network, the more bandwidth you provide, the more they'll use. We went to one show and put in a 10 gig fiber backbone one year. We didn't really change much of the front end infrastructure. Basically the same. It was the same Wi-Fi system, same connectivity, same streaming system, yada yada. But traffic went up 300% year on year because we had a faster backbone.
Is that backhaul? Is that uplink?
No, I mean, we did have more uplink as well, but that was just literally the ring around the site. We were able to move that. The bottleneck previously was we were using sort of point-to-point 5 gigahertz ubiquity links around the site, occasionally fiber. So we went from like a few hundred meg connecting this radio over at one side of the park to 10 gig or a gig, a gig wired to a 10 gig fiber backbone. So basically what happened was people were able to do more with their devices, whether they were on a laptop working backstage or whether they were in the show. They could do more with it, and because they could do more, they used more. So the better network you build, the more data they will use. That really
sure. But if we're talking consumers here, being able to live stream from their handhelds,
let's just take a simple one: doctor's office. Someone sat there, they watch a 30-minute show on Netflix. That's 150 gig probably.
But when you talk Coachella and you talk about you have all of these people and they all have media studios effectively in their pockets where they can, stream, and so your upstream is just going to be shattered, right? Yeah. I mean, the heavier that you can provide that upstream pipe, they're going to use it. It would seem,
Correct.
The more you get,
I'm missing a couple terms here, and I'm betting other people are too. You guys are all speaking the same language. You're already fluent. So we got what is it? Backhaul, which is just the connection from, as I understand it, connection from the radio into the internet itself.
It's backhaul is just the internet.
Backhaul is the internet. So however you get that, whether that's a cell backhaul like I'm using on my mountaintop LoRa deployments, or that's this fiber backbone It's just like that's the internet. Okay.
Satellite, whatever you got.
And then
just whatever connects.
What was
to
the
you.
uplink
Starlink
piece?
comes out.
Backhaul. What was the uplink?
Uplink
Because Travis had asked, like,
in our world of Helium 5G is how much upstream bandwidth you can send. So typically when people are browsing the internet, that's downstream. You're asking for content, right? You're saying, oh, show me Netflix, show me Facebook, show me Instagram, go through the feed, pulling data. Then as soon as you go, okay, I'm going to I'm at this show, I'm going to live stream some of Anderson Paak, bam, 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 I'm going to go on Facebook Live, bam, that's upstream.
Got it. Okay.
And typically, in cellular, it's asymmetric. There's a lot less upstream uplink than there is downlink, because most people's activity is show me this thing from the internet. But yeah, so when it comes to the 50 cents a gig, is not just for things that are downloaded. It also is for upstream traffic.
It's both ways.
So if you're in a place where that can happen, so let's say you've got a venue, you're like, okay, well, I'm going to put a couple of radios near the front stage in this venue. Great. If those users happen to be with carriers that roam to Helium 5G, you're going to pick up all that lovely video traffic and, all their Snapchats and all that kind of stuff going upstream.
Okay.
And if we do talk about, because now we're talking about actually pegging these radios, meaning these things are running 100% the time.
Yeah.
If you did the math, you're looking at about $60 an hour at 100% on all these radios.
That's what you think you can make, or that's what?
That's what you can actually make. If that's kind of the thing is like it's very
is that
hard
the cap?
to tell. That's maximizes if you have all the connections and everybody 100% download and upload, you're making $60 an hour.
Okay.
Per radio. So if you have 10 hours of, everybody can, like, for example, Coachella, I understand Coachella is covered. I'm just kind of giving people kind of an idea that, most people understand, like, oh, Coachella is a music festival. Something like that where you're always pegging the radios and you're 100% usage for 10 hours or however long. If you're making $60 an hour, you have one radio and you're, 10 hours, you can do the math at $600. Now, if you have 50 radios and they're all being pegged, you can start doing more math.
Yeah.
But then you require your backhaul to be able to cover said 50 radios. And
And what kind of backhaul are you going to need for that? So if you're getting up to that $60 an hour, which is just 60 divided by 50 cents per whatever, et cetera, et cetera. What would you need for that? Like, what is that something the average person can call up their provider and be like, hey, I want to upgrade my service to XYZ?
Business cable will handle one radio.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could do arrays. I mean, there are.
What's arrays?
We used to do this back with storm chasing, and I know this is way back in the day. I know I'm showing my age here, but when we were doing storm chasing, we would have to do cellular arrays, and there are still methods of spreading bandwidth across connections, but if you're in the middle of nowhere, and I don't know if we're considering this use case, Coachella being in the middle of nowhere, but if you're in the middle of nowhere and you need heavy bandwidth, then I mean it's a huge issue. It's something that, like, Starlink is. I mean everyone's very excited about Starlink.
I spend a lot of time, obviously, with all these different shows trying to source bandwidth, because for us, we needed bandwidth for a week or 2 days. Now, most telcos want you to have a 3-year contract when it comes to like busy.
Yeah.
So we had to get creative a lot of the time, and that means working with a lot of the microwave ISPs. So pretty much across the entirety of America, you can go to most counties and you will find a WISP wireless ISP. And those are the who will get you your backhaul when, Spectrum is still rolling DSL through the Santa Cruz Mountains. It is the folks at Cruisio and Ridge Wireless and those kind of companies who will say, okay, well, you need a link that's 200 down and 50 up. I can get that to you. Those are the folks to speak to.
Well, question: what do you think about people who are saying that WISPs are interfering with helium connectivity? I mean, I see it on the Discord. People talking about this, where because we are talking about the same bandwidth, or I mean the same.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
WISPs are starting to move. As I said, K12 broadband, there's been a lot of CBRS deployed. So, in those rural areas, you could come across someone who's already deployed a system. But the beauty of the CBRS system is that it makes room for everybody. So if you then go, okay, well, I'm going to put up this tower and I'm going to cover this specific area, and you're up against someone who's running a fixed. There's two types of access out there. There's fixed wireless access, so you're shooting a link to a house, and there's a little antenna on the house, and that that's just one link, and it's there all the time. That's mostly what WISPs are doing. What you could do with Helium 5G is have macro coverage to phones, which they can't do, right? So there's no reason why both systems, they could be on the same tower. The network will say, okay, well, you need to move to this frequency. You need to move to this frequency. That's your transmit power. That's your transmit power. That's it.
And WISP have to respect that?
The system, the spectrum access system dictates that. The WISPs have no choice. The spectrum access system dictates what frequency and what transmit power you can use.
So
gotcha.
let's talk about that, because I think that's kind of something that we did glance over. So there is a back end, we're talking Helium now. There's a back end for LoRa, and Travis can, I think you guys call it the router, that pretty much just transmits all the data for LoRa. There's something that's in play for CBRS, and that's the SAS, the Spectrum Access I think service, right? If I'm not mistaken. That controls everything, and that's not ran by Helium. That's actually ran by certain companies like Google and Fierce Wireless. That whole back end runs the entire network. So all the radios that connect will connect to that back end, the SAS, and pretty much all the radios talk between in that back end, and they kind of have to follow what it pretty much dictates. So you're not allowed. There's limitations on certain areas where you're actually not even allowed to, onboard these radios. Like, for example, military areas. And in the 5G, I did make a comment that's been pinned, and you guys can actually see all the grandfathered in areas that you can't really deploy. But all that is controlled by that back end.
Dig it, which is so that's administered by someone kind of bigger and more organized than any one of us. So I guess as we kind of wrap this up, because I don't want to go too long, and I think there's a ton of great info so far, is for the average person who's like, yep, hey, I jumped on that 5G reservation. It's coming in the mail. What would you advise them? Like, hey, this is what you should do. I'm not going to tell you to buy or sell the thing, but if you want to deploy this, these are kind of the parameters that you'll need to meet if you want to do anything with it as far as earning HNT or earning money. Where would you start with them?
You want to
or I can give you an example where I'd start, and you'd be like, no, you're totally fucking wrong.
No, go ahead.
Cool. So I got a little cookie shop in San Diego. We're in one of the suburbs. We're right across from the post office. We're first level. So we got this little room. And as soon as I saw 5G, I'm like, I'll put up an antenna outside the store. I'll aim it at the post office. And when all those people are waiting in line at Christmas, I'm going to pick up all their cell signals and process that and get paid for it. After listening to you guys, I'm like, maybe that's not such a good idea. But yeah, where would you look at that and say like, okay, that's wrong, or you're going to need more of this, or try some other thing?
So it's probably easiest if I just sort of go through some of the. I moved from the West Coast to Brooklyn recently, and I was out for the first time watching some Welsh rugby the other day, and in a bar in New York, and it just happens to be in a place called the Liberty. And where's the big room? Like a lot of places in New York, it's downstairs. And I wanted to be like, text my daughter and send her a picture. Couldn't even do that. The signal was so poor. So I'm like, bingo. This is where I put Helium 5G.
Yeah.
Because I'm underground. Verizon are not going to go into this, 100-person capacity room and put a small cell in there. They're not. However, for my, economy of scale, it makes sense. Put a radio in there, pick up all that traffic. There's people there. Sometimes when that particular place there's rugby on for like 8 hours, they could be there the whole day. So that's a great location. And I think, Dennis's other examples play into that.
Now, one thing I kind of wanted to also mention, like Jeremy was talking about New York. You know, a lot of these buildings, like I don't know exactly where in San Diego you're located, but I do know that area, and I do know that there's a lot of buildings like high rises, and you know, if the signal is not great in that area, there's I know that there's also like Santa Monica. It's you know, has data everywhere because you know it's a very populated area. But if you start going down some of these like little side streets that you know has a lot of people, a lot of you know foot traffic, but there's just no data just because the signals are being blocked. If it's something like that, then that is a great you know location. But you know, if there is signal from other providers and you're you know you're doing speed tests, and you could just run a regular speed test, you know, on just regular service, and you can see what you're getting. So, but if you're getting like really low, like, okay, I know 5G should be, you know, 300 megabits in this area, you know, like down the street it's 300, but here I'm you know, at 25, or, you know, you're fluctuating between 4G and 5G and don't have really good service, that might be a good area. But like the good areas that, you know, we're talking about is like where Jeremy's, where it's going, you know, in an area like a sports bar where there's going to be a lot of people sitting there, especially during events, and they're going to be there for a few hours, and you know they're always on their phone, they're sending pictures to you know their family, or they're you know Snapchatting and Instagramming everything. And one thing is I kind of want to get to you, like those people are not, you know, people think, excuse the language, but people think people are assholes and they're not approachable, and that's not really the truth, you know. Like you do got to know what you're going up and you know when you talk to them, but you know, go up to these people and be like, hey, who's the owner? Like you know, they are approachable. I mean, I'm sure you guys, you know, I know you Nick are deploying hotspots all the time, and I'm sure you go and talk to people, you know.
That's like the most fun part. It's like, hey, who owns this place? I want to talk to you. Let me see if I can help you out, right?
Have anybody been like, you know, pulled out a gun and be like, get out of my house or something? Like, no, it's never happened like that. So I think there's this misconnotation that people are going to like say no. And if they say no, like, you know,
find somewhere else.
Exactly. Go to the literally go next door. Like ask them like, oh, hey.
The question's simple. How do mobiles work in your bar, cafe, restaurant, garage, waiting area? How do mobiles work? Are they good? No, it's terrible. Drives me crazy. I can fix that. I just need to connect to your internet.
And not only can I fix that, but I can fix that with helping you out in other ways as well. So
for people that want to know how I actually go and approach people, I go in and tell them, hey, look, this is what I do. I don't tell them I'm affiliated with Helium or this project is crypto.
No, you can't tell people about blockchain first off.
Correct. I know, man. Like that's the one thing I tell people. Like nothing against Helium. I think it's a great idea, but
no,
like,
I understand. I understand.
People think, you know, cryptocurrencies and all this. It's like, well, hold on, you know. So I go in and be like, hey, look, how's your coverage? You know, or I go in and test it myself and say, hey, look, my name is Dennis. I work with this company. This is what we do. I come in, I install these, you know, this hardware, and we give out 5G to your patrons. In turn, I will pay your internet. Normally, you know, an internet connection like that is, you know, it's a couple $100. But what I do is there's multiple reasons I do it. But one is because when I offer, you know, people a percentage, they're expecting you to make $1 million, right? And they're hoping that you're making $1 million. At the start, if this is not producing the amount that we want to, they have nothing in the skin. I offer them the hardware. I'm paying a bill for them. They're still getting internet connection. I'm just, you know, splitting 100 megabits for them.
Yep.
I also remove the risk that if they don't pay their internet bill, this stops earning. So
But have your ducks in a row. Have your paperwork. You know, have it where, you know, I can walk in and I can say, hey, look, you know, this is what I have to offer, and this is you know, if you have a location, you know, I think there are host agreements that are kind of, you know, floating out around there, you know, on Discord or whatnot that are worth looking at. And I think it's important to have your paperwork in order, you know, when you go talk to someone.
Actually, I actually have a lawyer friend of mine actually writing up a contract that is going to be available to the community, and nice. I'm hoping, you know, before the end of the year to have it available. He's kind of doing it as a favor to the community. So, I'm not bugging him on his time, like, hey, get on this. But I do think that he's he's going to offer that like you said, have your ducks in row and have everything. Don't go in just hey, this is what I do. This is crypto. Don't scare the person off. And I promise you that person's not going to kick you out if they say no. There's somewhere else. There's so many other locations that you can go out and just deploy it. So
I'm thinking of this is that it doesn't actually seem as technical as I thought it might be. Is that if the antenna comes with the radio, and all I'm doing is plugging the radio into the Freedom-Fi, then I just upgrade their internet. I plug in this stuff, and as long as I'm putting the antenna in the right place, like not behind a wall, I'm probably going to be okay. So what I'm looking for now is could just think of my parameters out loud, is like 1,000 feet or less of distance, ideally probably 500 feet, just so I've got plenty of leeway. And a lot of people stuck for a long time with their phones. Like that's the money shot. And then poor internet. That was the last question I had. So you said, Dennis, you just test it with your phone. Is there some kind of like fancy testing device that a geek like me would be like, oh my God, if I can't live without this thing? Or is it just totally fine to do? Just use your phone.
Just use your phone.
I can recommend some apps if people want to get like nerdy on signal strength. Use an Android, because iPhone doesn't allow you to do anything with the radio. So it's an Android phone, and ideally you want something relatively new, so like Pixel 4 and above, that kind of era. A lot of those have CBRS built in. Samsung S10 and newer have CBRS. OnePlus 7 and newer, I think, is CBRS. So any of those Android handsets, make sure they support what is called LTE band 48. It's easy to find. The applications you can get, one of the ones that we favor, a lot of us who work at Solana, is Network Cell Info Lite. Is the free app. And it'll give you nice dials and gauges and all kinds of things about signal strength, tell you what cell you're connected to, and extra information.
Tell you what direction that cell is in. I mean, it's pretty slick.
You can create paths where you walk around, and it'll create a little heat map. And then I think it's like $3, and you get the pro version. It's kind of a no-brainer. And for speed testing, so throughput testing, I use nperf.com. N for November, perf.com. That's a French app. I switched from speed test on that years ago.
My house. And so like in an area like this, like I'm at 3 megabits. Sorry, I think my image is mirrored, but I'm at 4 megabits down. Like I don't have 5G here. Like there's right behind me, like I'm surrounded by hills. So in an area like this, like now if we were using higher end, antennas and stuff like that, yes, like this would have been a perfect area, but it probably won't make past my, it probably won't get past my my windows and walls. So that's
it won't get outside. That was one of the other questions. Like, hey, should I put this in my house so that I provide 5G for my daughters?
Yes, but there's also you're gonna, that's kind of gaming the system in a sense.
Yep.
And there is kind of protections against it, but yeah, like you're also not moving, that much data. So is it really worth $2,500 for, only you to move the data through your network?
Got it. Okay, cool. So unless you have many, many daughters all on the phone at the same time.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It depends how many daughters we're talking about.
If you're running a cult, fine, but, not.
Okay. Cool.
Honestly, and kind of going back to your installation, and I know I've had a lot of people kind of ask me, like, how's the installation going to be? Is this going to be super complex? Like, realistically, if you're able to install a hotspot, you can do this. It's pretty much internet in, internet from this to I recommend a PoE just so you can run just an Ethernet cable out, but internet in, internet from here, into here, out to your radio. That's it.
Okay, so we're in PoE to the radio because the radio gets the power.
Ethernet is a lot easier to work with than coax.
Yeah.
Yep. True fact.
So.
Okay, cool. I think that, man, if you watch this and you don't know what's going on, then you you've been sleeping. Is there anything else that that you guys want to chuck in there you feel we haven't covered that's one of the bigger points?
I mean, don't be afraid to experiment. Is the thing. If we don't know what the earnings are going to be. We've committed and both pre-ordered equipment. We have an idea that it could be successful, but the one thing I would say is that carrier neutral host and mobile network offload is a huge industry. It is one of the biggest industries in the world globally. American Tower, who run some of these big towers and rent space to people like Verizon and T-Mobile and AT&T, and even run radios for them and handle their traffic and charge them $2 a gig. Their valuation is what? I just looked at $126 billion. That this market is massive, and neutral host is the killer app.
And Crown Castle, the small company that's kind of against the competitor of American's Tower is only worth $80 billion. So it's small comparison.
Yeah, and when you're saying carrier neutral, that probably makes a ton of sense to you guys. That's just like the person who builds the tower and puts up the radios and says, "Hey AT&T or Verizon, you don't have to put up your own tower. We'll just process your signals for you." Right, and that's what you're saying Helium is doing, is making all of us so we can participate as carrier neutral towers of micro sizes, basically.
Absolutely.
Where anybody can join. AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, Mint,
exactly.
Dish, anybody. And
yep.
For them, unlike, because I know that Amazon just came out with their back end, that's, this is all private, they have to go out and buy the equipment, they would have to go out and buy the gateways and the radios. They would have to source the locations. They would have to do the installs. They would have to do the maintenance. Where with Helium, they sign on, they get contracted at, 50 cents a gig, but they don't have to buy the hardware. They use our hardware. We're the ones kind of, eating that, that cost. But in turn, it's very beneficial to other companies because they don't have to do that.
And it's routed as needed. So, yeah.
Correct.
Super, super cool. All right, fellas. I think
Nick, thanks, man.
Thank you guys. That was really helpful. I kind of came into this conversation pretty ignorant and backwards, and I'm leaving it at least a little less ignorant and a little bit more forward. So thank you guys. There's
a lot to learn, and me and Jeremy are always in the 5G CBRS room. We're more than happy to answer you guys' questions. I know there's going to be tons. And we're actually really nice people, and there's 7 months worth of conversations. I guarantee you, your answer's been your questions have been answered in some form or another. So we're always happy to help.
And shout out to the other folks on the channel as well who help out. It's not just me and Dennis. There's a whole bunch of people like Steve DeWigo and 𝗵𝗺 and a whole bunch of folks who are in there all the time, really helping the community out. And that's one of the reasons we love this thing so much, right? It's like we're not just on our own trying to do a thing. We're part of a community, and that's
incredible.
That's the one of the things that I enjoy most.
Cool. Right on, guys.
I enjoyed it, guys.
Wrap it there. Thank you, guys.
Catch you later.